Hello and welcome to This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holden. On this week's presentation, we focus on the activities of Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa for week ending August 5. We bring you highlights of his address to Parliament. We tell you about his meetings with farmers and with players within the agriculture sector.
The Ministry of Agriculture is advising farmers and others in possession of leases for state lands that under the laws governing leasing of state lands, no person who leases land from government is allowed to sublet those lands to a third party unless written permission is sought and given to the leasee for this to take place. Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa has noted that this is happening in the MMA scheme, with overseas-based holders of land leases charging farmers who rent from them as much as $30,000 an acre, and by extension driving up the cost of production. The Ministry of Agriculture is therefore requesting all farmers interested in accessing lands to do so through the MMA ADA and pay just $3,600 per acre for both land rental and D&I rates. In the meantime, the board of the MMA ADA is now doing an audit of lands leased to overseas-based persons with a view to reassigning those lands if the owners are found to be exploiting small farmers of Region 5. Through the 2023 budget allocations to the MMA, it is anticipated that approximately 20,000 acres of lands will become available to farmers by the second half of this year. A message from the Ministry of Agriculture.
The Ministry of Agriculture is warning members of the public that it is illegal to dump garbage of any kind near to or into drainage and irrigation waterways across the country. The NDIA, the agency tasked with the maintenance of drainage and irrigation in Guyana, has noted that there is an alarming increase in the incidence of garbage getting into DNI waterways and causing blockages in the first instance. But worse than that, the garbage that includes clothing, rotting carcasses, pieces of wood and metal gets past protective grills of the critical mobile and fixed pumps, resulting in damage to the pumps, which have to be taken out of service for repairs, placing communities at risk, especially during the rainy season. The Ministry of Agriculture notes that when this happens, millions have to be spent on repairs to the pumps and on clearing the canals of debris thrown there by irresponsible citizens. The ministry warns that rangers of the NDIA will be on the lookout for those engaging in this illegal practice. Persons caught will be made to face the full force of the law. A message from the NDIA, Ministry of Agriculture.
The Ministry of Agriculture advises that persons desirous of importing animal products, such as meats, must first acquire a permit and/or no objection to do so from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority (GLDA). Prospective importers must fill out an application for import license form. This must be handed in to GLDA along with a quotation from the supplier of the products to be imported, as well as a certificate of origin of the commodity. Meat and meat products must be from approved countries, and in cases where this is not so, then that country must apply directly to the GLDA for a permission to export to Guyana. In this case, a risk assessment is then conducted by the GLDA in association with the Veterinary Public Health Unit of the Ministry of Health. At the time of the application to GLDA, the importer must also indicate his or her interest in this regard to the Veterinary Public Health Unit, which plays a critical role in determining whether the license to import will be granted or not. If the import is allowed, the importer is notified by the GLDA. A fee is payable before the permit is prepared and issued to the importer. It should be noted that meat or meat products imported without an import license will be seized and destroyed. For more information on this and other issues, contact the GLDA head office on 220-6556 or email glda1910@gmail.com. Visit our Facebook page and leave a comment.
We begin this week's presentation by telling you that Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa hosted an emancipation social in the compound of the Ministry of Agriculture on Regent Street Monday. The event saw a cook-off amongst the various agencies of the ministry, with staff decked out in their African outfits. On Emancipation Day, Tuesday, the Agriculture Minister attended the annual Emancipation Day observances in Eccles on the east bank of Demerara. While offering remarks, Minister Mustafa spoke about the efforts that led to the abolition of slavery and the contributions made by Afro-Guyanese towards Guyana's development. A group of farmers from the Domino Livestock and Agriculture Co-op met with Minister Mustafa to discuss infrastructural upgrades and ongoing projects in Ithaca Village, West Bank, Berbice. During the meeting, Minister Mustafa promised that a team from the ministry would visit the community to determine where additional works are required and the time frame arrived at for those interventions to be effected. That team is expected in the community this week. Meetings are also to be held with the farmers to discuss agriculture development in the community of Ithaca in general. Minister Mustafa was accompanied at that meeting by Chairman of the NDIA, Lionel Wordsworth, and the Technical Compliance Officer, Aditya Prasad. A delegation from the British Virgin Islands, BVI, met with Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa this past week to discuss strengthening ties to support agricultural development between the two countries. Minister Mustafa told the visiting delegation that even though their land mass is significantly smaller than Guyana's, there is significant scope for collaboration and investment in Guyana's agriculture sector. Some possible areas for collaboration that were discussed included development of shade house culture among farmers, as well as steps to formally establish a pesticides and toxic chemicals monitoring authority in the BVI. The BVI delegation included Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, Honorable Dr. Carl Dawson, Director of Agriculture and Fisheries, Theodore James, and Mr. Martin Alfonso. Minister Mustafa was accompanied at the meeting by his Director General, Madanlal Ramraj, Permanent Secretary, Delma Ned, and the Registrar and Deputy Registrar of the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board here, Trisha Garnath and Suresh Amichand. We now bring you the address to the second part of the 66th sitting of the National Assembly this past week by Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to quote some point here that we have. In the non-oil sector, rice in 2021 production, paddy was 861,214 metric ton. In 2022, it increased to 939,377 metric ton. Mr. Speaker, rice production was 559,789 metric ton in 2021. In 2022, it rose to 610,595 metric ton. So I don't know where those honorable members are getting their facts. And Mr. Speaker, then when you look at the yield, in 2020, when this government took office, the yield was 5.7 tons per hectare. And we have increased that in 2023 to 6.2 tons per hectare. And that shows how we are increasing production in the non-oil sector. And I want to also go along various areas for vegetables, and I can talk about the high-value crops, things like onion, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, red cabbage. We have moved production from 2,726 metric ton in 2021 to 5,017 metric ton in 2022. Those are the facts. Mr. Speaker, root crops. We have increased production from 12,207 metric ton in 2021 to 23,963 metric ton, and 96% increase in root crop. Mr. Speaker, fruits. We have increased production from 180,402 metric tons to 197,873 metric tons. A 10% increase. Mr. Speaker, in coconuts, we have increased production from 36,544 metric tons to 49,138 metric tons, a 34% increase. Mr. Speaker, meat, we have increased production from 53,960 metric tons to 60,112 metric tons, another 11% increase. And Mr. Speaker, aquaculture, which is a success story in this country, which is now being developed as an industry in this country, we have increased that by 101,885 tons in terms of differences, 608% in aquaculture production. Those are the facts. Those are the facts in the non-oil economy, and I want those members over there, so when they come here, they must speak the facts. Mr. Speaker, and we heard just now the honorable member talk about failures. She spoke about failures in one, the transformative project that we wanted to start prior to 2015 when we were in government. And they have the ability to use issues and use events to satisfy their needs. For example, we knew for a fact that in 2020, the general election that was held in March the 1st, they were trying to hold on to government unlawfully for 5 months, and at the end of it, trying to fool the Guyanese, telling the Guyanese that they won the election. That's the kind of way they're trying to use even to satisfy their needs. Mr. Speaker, it's public knowledge that development is a concept that is far, far from their vocabulary. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, let us look at the Amelia Falls Hydro Project. They stopped it. That was a transformative project. Today, Guyanese would have enjoyed cheap electricity if that project would have been on stream. But the APNUAFC stopped that project. Mr. Speaker, we heard they said just now that the project failed. The project did not fail. It failed because the APNUAFC failed the project. They are the failure. They have sabotaged the entire project. And they're coming here now to use that to justify their action. Mr. Speaker, we heard about the specialty hospital. That they thought that project failed. They stopped the project, especially Honorable Member Mr. Ramjatan and his party. They voted against it. When in 2011 to 2015 government of the PPPC, they voted against with the 1-seat majority. They used their 1-seat majority to derail the progress in our country. And now they are coming here, sharing crocodile tears, telling the Guyanese people that they must believe them. Mr. Speaker, I want to inform the honorable members over there, not so long ago, a few weeks back, a few months back, the Guyanese people would have spoken. The PPP Civic had a landslide victory in the local government election. Mr. Speaker, we won 67 local authority areas out of the 80 local authority areas.
Good point.
And that is not the fact. We increase our support in their areas of support, places like Georgetown, New Amsterdam. We won Bartica. We won Madja. We increase our support in Linden. We won Pleasance. So, Mr. Speaker, if all the policies of the PPP Civic government was bad, then their supporters wouldn't have voted for us. But they saw the vision of this party, they saw the development agenda of this party, they saw the transformation that is taking place in our country, and they voted solidly for the People's Progressive Party Civic.
Good point.
Mr. Speaker, we must not come here like empty barrels and make nice. We must come here with facts. I am here producing the facts. Producing the facts that we have. For example, they were talking about they are seeing growth in the oil economy, the oil sector. We have a lot of growth today. Today, Guyana is the envy of the Caribbean. Guyana is leading the charge for food security in the Caribbean. Guyana is transforming the entire, not only Guyana, but the Caribbean, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our President, our President, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali, is leading the agriculture agenda in CARICOM. The entire 15 states in CARICOM are looking forward to that leadership, that transformation that is taking place right now in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, and not long ago, when I became Minister of Agriculture, Guyana had ceded its place to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the first time in the history of CARICOM. Since the formation of CARICOM, Guyana would have lost its place in terms of speaking on agriculture. Our place was taken away by St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And when we get back into government in August of 2020, with the transformation that has taken place, and with the kind of leadership that was displayed by His Excellency the President, today Guyana is leading the charge, and CARICOM will be successful with Guyana leading the way to reduce the food import bill of 25% by 2025. That's the way that we have been doing things. And Mr. Speaker, we heard just now about sugar. We heard just now about sugar. Right? Mr. Speaker, we said, and any country in the world, use a black sheep. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, we said in our manifesto, and we are talking about increasing the loan ceiling in our country. We need more money, and as a country develops, and any family, the Honorable, my colleague, would have explained it earlier, right? That as a country develop, as a family develop, your ceiling or your spending power will increase. As long as your spending power increase, the ability to earn will increase. So when you take a loan, you will have more money to service that loan and pay back that loan. But you cannot wait until you have earnings to develop your house or your country. You have to have the money in advance. That is why we are seeing the total transformation of our country. You are seeing the total transformation of our country. Honorable Member Indar and my colleague Dr. Vindhya Prasad would have stated the development that are taking place in the public works sector, in the health sector. And when you look at the agriculture sector, we are seeing a revolution. We are seeing a revolution. I just mentioned, Mr. Speaker, I just mentioned just now some of the traditional crops, some of the traditional produce that we are producing. But when you look at the non-traditional area, we are making those an industry now. Less than 3 years, today marked 3 years for the PPP Civic in government. Mr. Speaker, we have transformed a number of areas. Let us look at the corn and soya project. By the end of this year, we will be cultivating approximately 3,000 acres of corn and soya. We have already built silos at the Takama Savannah. We are now constructing a wharf, and we have transformed the entire network of road to that area. Mr. Speaker, you can leave Georgia are strong, and in less than 2 hours, you're in the Tacoma Savannah looking at the corn and soya, looking at the silos and looking at the wharf. That's the transformation that we are talking about. That's the transformation that we are talking about. But when you don't have vision, when you come in this parliament and you're trying to heckle without any facts, that is why we have seen less. 5 years they were in government, and after 5 years the people said no more. No more for them. And for a lifetime, they can come in here and beat their chest, make noise over their breath. We'll never again see the seat of government in this country. Never again they will see the seat of government. Mr. Speaker, you know why? Because the programs that we have started, the people-friendly programs, Mr. Speaker, people-centered programs, and we heard some member over there talk about people-centered program, that we don't have any people-centered program. When you look at the programs that we have, when you look, Dr. Singh talk about the cash grant for school children, which they took away. They took away. Today, school children are enjoying the cash grant. They are enjoying increased uniform vouchers. We are seeing cash grant to vulnerable families. When the COVID started and we were in government, we give cash grant to every single household in this country. We have given cash grant to the sugar workers who are retrenched under the AFP-NUAFC. Mr. Speaker, we have given cash grant to the fisher folks. Those are the people-centered programs that we're talking about. So when we have this money, when we take this loan, and when we have more money in our country, the benefit of the people, the benefit for the people increases. You have more spending power. You have more development taking place. That is why the people of our country, they are now embracing the policies of this government. They are looking forward for the future in this country, where we will ensure that we transform the length and breadth of this country. Today, all the programs, the new programs we are seeing coming on stream, more money is needed to spend on those programs. You look at the 5 years that the AFP-NUAFC was in government, not one single new program, not one single new program they implemented. All the programs that they tried to do were PPP civic programs that we started when we were in government. And today you are seeing new projects. Some of the projects that were mentioned, the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, the 4-lane highway. You see new housing schemes. You see the Quarantine River Bridge. You see new area in production. New area in production. You see more land being taken up. New infrastructure being built. For example, in the agriculture sector, we are now modernizing the agriculture sector. We are moving the agriculture sector from a labor-intensive sector to one of a modern sector. We are making agriculture more smarter, doing agriculture in a smarter way, climate-smart agriculture. We are seeing more farm-to-market road. We are now building new labs. We are building tissue culture labs, where we will produce not only hundreds but millions of planting material for our farmers in the near future. That's the development that we are talking about. So when we take these loans, when we have more money, the benefit goes to the people. The benefit goes to the people with these programs. So, Mr. Speaker, it's important that we have to look why we want to increase the ceiling of this loan, because it's important that we develop our country now. It's important that we modernize our infrastructure. We can't leave behind. The world is moving fast.
Finally, on This Week in Agriculture, Guyana has received the first batch of millet seeds from India to commence trials here. The government of Guyana, through the Ministry of Agriculture, will soon commence trials for millet cultivation after receiving a quantity of millet seeds from the Indian government. On Friday last, Indian High Commissioner to Guyana, Dr. K.J. Srinivasa, handed over the seeds to Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa at the Ministry of Agriculture. In accepting the seeds, Minister Mustafa expressed confidence in the success of the trial noting that Guyana has the land, the necessary climate, and inputs to support the commercial cultivation of millet.
You know for a fact when His Excellency the President went to India, he made a commitment that Guyana will set aside 200 acres of land to start the cultivation of millet. And then subsequently after that, I went to the millet conference in India. That conference was addressed by Prime Minister Modi and other dignitaries. And I also said that we'll first do it in a phased approach, and we'll start it by in 50 acres plot. When I came back, the High Commissioner and myself spoke about this issue, and I asked him that we have to have the seed. But whilst I was in India too, I had a bilateral with the Minister of Agriculture from India, Mr.
Narendra Singh
Tomar, Mr. Tomar, and he made a commitment that they will supply us millet seed. You know, millet is a very good crop for us in terms of what we are trying to do to get food security, to reduce the food import bill. And millet is a crop that is an indigenous crop, which was neglected over the years. And I think that Guyana is leading the charge in food security. We want to reduce the food import bill of CARICOM by 25%. And you know our president, His Excellency President Irfaan Ali, he is the lead in agriculture. And I think this is an appropriate time that we start the crop in the Caribbean right here in Guyana. The climate is good. The land is, I think we have good land, fertile land. And millet is a hard crop that can withstand the weather condition and the tropical climate that we have here. So I want to say that we are happy. We know for a fact that His Excellency the High Commissioner will be departing our shores shortly. On behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, on behalf of the government of Guyana, I want to express our gratitude to him. Under his tenure, we have had a number of projects. As a matter of fact, as I'm speaking here only last week, he and I talk about a number of other issues that we have to follow up in terms of in the agriculture sector. Specialists to come and help us in the agriculture sector, to start the tissue culture lab, to produce planting material, to look at our rice sector, to look at our hemp, the starting of hemp production, all the areas that we have been working on. And also we are looking at agro-processing. Recently we applied for a grant that the Indian government will assist Guyana with. And I have written to the High Commission, and all those plans are now we are moving it forward, and it will become reality shortly.
India is the largest millet producer globally and is also assuming global leadership in advancing the objective of addressing one of the world's foremost challenges, which is food security. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. Until next time then, be good to yourselves and to each other.